The transmission came through the dark space between stars like a cry for help. It was weak and full of static, but Captain Jin Woo heard it clearly on his ship's communication system. He was patrolling the outer edge of human space when the message reached him. "This is Ambassador Dae-ho of the Valerian Confederation," the voice said through the crackling speakers. "We send this message to any who will listen. Our people are dying. Our worlds are burning. We do not ask for weapons or soldiers. We ask only for mercy. We need medicine for our sick. We need safe places for our children. We need help." Jin Woo stopped what he was doing and listened carefully. The voice continued, getting weaker as the signal faded. "We offer our knowledge and friendship to any who will aid us. We have studied the stars for 1,000 years. We know how to heal sickness and grow food on dead worlds. But we cannot fight. We have never learned war. Please, if anyone hears this, help us. Our children are afraid." The message ended with coordinates and a plea. Jin Woo played it again to make sure he heard correctly. Then he called Dr. Su Jin to the bridge. Su Jin was the ship's expert on alien life. She had met more alien species than anyone else in the human fleet. When she heard the message, her face went pale. "Jin Woo, this is serious," she said. "I can hear the fear in his voice, and look at these bio readings they sent." She pointed to the data that came with the message. The numbers showed massive population movements, destroyed cities, and millions of deaths. "What kind of aliens are they?" Jin Woo asked. "The Valerians are 3 species working together," Su Jin explained. "The Nereids live in water and have blue skin that you can see through. The Quartzians are made of living crystal. The Aryans are gas beings who float in their planet's atmosphere. They're all peaceful. They've never fought a war. Who's attacking them?" Su Jin's expression grew dark. "From what I can tell, it's the Hegemony Empire. They're led by a species called the Draconis. Big reptile creatures who love war. They don't just conquer planets. They kill everyone on them for fun." Jin Woo felt anger rising in his chest. "How many people are we talking about?" "The Valerians have about 50 billion people across their 3 home worlds," Su Jin said. "The Hegemony has been attacking them for 6 months. They've already destroyed 12 cities and killed millions. And they're asking for medical help? That's all they want. Medicine, food, and safe places for refugees. They're not asking anyone to fight for them. They just want their people to survive." Jin Woo looked at the star map showing where the message came from. It was far from human space, but not impossible to reach. "How long would it take us to get there?" he asked. "About 2 weeks with our fastest ships," Su Jin replied. "But Jin Woo, we should send this to Earth Command first. This is bigger than just our patrol ship." Jin Woo nodded and opened a channel to Earth. Within hours, the message was being discussed in the highest levels of human government. On Earth, Admiral Kyung-min sat in a war room with other military leaders. They had been listening to the Valerian message for the 3rd time. 50 billion civilians, General Hyewan said quietly, and they're being hunted like animals. "The Hegemony has done this before," said another officer. "We have reports of them destroying 47 other civilizations. They don't take prisoners. They don't accept surrender. They kill everything that moves." Admiral Kyung-min studied the data. The Hegemony controlled a large part of space on the far side of the galaxy. They had been growing stronger for centuries, destroying any species that couldn't fight back. "What do we know about their military?" Kyung-min asked. "They have about 8,000 warships," the intelligence officer replied. "Big, slow, heavily armed. They rely on fear and overwhelming numbers. They've never faced real resistance." "And the Valerians?" "No military at all. They have some civilian ships, but nothing that could fight. They're completely defenseless. Kyung-min was quiet for a long moment. Then he spoke. The Valerians asked for medicine and refugee camps, he said. But that won't solve their problem. As long as the hegemony exists, they'll keep killing. Sir, are you suggesting military action? General Haiwan asked. I'm suggesting we give them the help they need, Kyung-min replied. Real help. Permanent help. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what the admiral meant. Sir, this would mean war with the hegemony, someone pointed out. No, Kyung-min said firmly. This would mean the end of the hegemony. Meanwhile, back on Jin-Woo's ship, they received new orders from Earth Command. Su-jin read them with growing surprise. Jin-Woo, look at this, she said. They're sending the entire Third Fleet. That's 400 ships. Jin-Woo frowned. 400 ships to deliver medical supplies? That's not all. Su-jin continued reading. They're also sending the 5th Army, the 6th Marine Division, and the Special Operations Command. That's 2 million soldiers. 2 million soldiers? Jin-Woo couldn't believe it. Su-jin, the Valerians asked for doctors and food, not an army. Su-jin looked worried. I think Earth Command has a different idea about how to help them. 3 days later, they received another message from the Valerians. This time, Ambassador Dae-ho sounded even more desperate. We have received no response to our plea, he said. The hegemony has destroyed 3 more of our cities. Our people are fleeing to the outer planets, but there is nowhere safe to go. If anyone can hear this, please help us. We will give you anything you want. Just save our children. Jin-Woo felt his anger growing stronger. These were peaceful people asking for basic help to survive. And somewhere in space, the human fleet was already moving toward them. But as Jin-Woo would soon learn, when humans decide to help someone, they don't do it halfway. The last message from Earth Command was simple. All ships proceed to Valerian space. Rules of engagement. Eliminate all threats to civilian population. No exceptions. As Jin-Woo's ship jumped into hyperspace toward the Valerian worlds, he wondered if the peaceful aliens knew what kind of help was coming their way. In the depths of space, the human war machine was waking up, and when it arrived at the Valerian worlds, nothing would ever be the same again. 2 weeks later, the human fleet arrived at the edge of Valerian space. Ambassador Dae-ho was waiting for them in his small diplomatic ship, hoping to meet the beings who had answered their call for help. What he saw made his blue translucent. Skin turned pale with shock. Hundreds of massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in perfect formation. Each ship was twice the size of anything the Valerians had ever built. Weapons bristled from their hulls like metal teeth. Fighter craft swarmed around them like angry insects. By the depths, Dae-ho whispered to himself. What are these creatures? He had expected a few cargo ships carrying medicine and food. Instead, he was looking at the largest military force he had ever seen. Admiral Kyung-min's flagship was 1 kilometer long and covered in armor plating. When Dae-ho's small ship approached, human fighters moved to escort him. The pilots' faces were hidden behind dark helmets, making them look like machines of war. On the bridge of the human flagship, Admiral Kyung-min waited to meet the aliens. They had come to help. Dr. Su-jin stood beside him, ready to translate if needed. Admiral, the Valerian ambassador is coming aboard, reported Captain Jin-Woo, who had been promoted to serve as the admiral's aide. Good, Kyung-min said. Let's see what we're dealing with. When Ambassador Dae-ho entered the human ship, he was amazed by what he saw. Everything was built for war. The walls were thick metal. Weapons were mounted at every corner. Human soldiers marched through the corridors in full combat gear. The humans themselves surprised him. They were smaller than he expected, but they moved with purpose and confidence. Their eyes were sharp and alert. These were clearly warriors, not the peaceful traders or doctors he had hoped to meet. Ambassador Dae-ho was led to a large room where Admiral Kyung-min was waiting. The human leader was a woman with short black hair and cold, calculating eyes. She wore a military uniform covered in symbols that Dae-ho didn't understand. "Ambassador Dae-ho," Admiral Kyung-min said through the translator, "I am Admiral Kyung-min of the Human Space Force. We received your message." Dae-ho bowed in the Valerian way of showing respect. "Thank you for coming, Admiral. We are grateful that you heard our plea. We desperately need medical supplies and safe places for our refugees. Our people are dying, and we have nowhere else to turn." Admiral Kyung-min studied the alien carefully. Dae-ho looked tired and scared. His species was clearly not built for war. His thin frame and gentle movements showed he had never raised a weapon in his life. "We understand your situation," the Admiral said. "We've been tracking the hegemony's movements. They've destroyed 12 of your cities and killed over 5 million of your people." "Yes," Dae-ho said sadly. "That's why we need sanctuary for our survivors. If you could provide medical aid and temporary shelter, we would be forever grateful. We can offer you our knowledge of star navigation and planetary sciences in return." Admiral Kyung-min exchanged glances with Dr. Soo-jin. The human scientist looked uncomfortable. "Ambassador," Admiral Kyung-min said slowly, "we didn't come here to give you medical supplies." Dae-ho felt confused. "But that's what we asked for. Medicine and safe places for our people." "You asked for help," the Admiral corrected him, "and we're going to help you. But not the way you think." General Hai-wan entered the room at that moment. She was even more intimidating than the Admiral, taller, with scars on her hands and face that spoke of many battles. She carried weapons on her belt that made Dae-ho nervous. "Ambassador," General Hai-wan said, "we brought 400 warships and 2 million soldiers. We didn't come here to treat your wounded. We came here to stop the hegemony from making any more wounded." Dae-ho's eyes went wide with horror. "No, you don't understand. We didn't ask for war. We asked for peace. We asked for mercy. My people are pacifists. We don't believe in violence. And that's exactly why you're being slaughtered," General Hai-wan said bluntly. "The hegemony doesn't understand mercy. They only understand force." Dr. Soo-jin stepped forward, trying to soften the conversation. "Ambassador, what the General means is that we want to solve your problem permanently. As long as the hegemony exists, your people will never be safe." "But we never asked you to fight for us," Dae-ho protested. "We asked for humanitarian aid, food, medicine, refugee camps. We never wanted anyone to die because of us." Admiral Kyung-min's expression softened slightly. "Ambassador, I understand your people are peaceful. But let me ask you something. If someone was murdering your children, would you want me to just bandage their wounds? Or would you want me to stop the murderer?" I would want you to stop the murderer," Dae-ho admitted, "but not by becoming a murderer yourself." "Sometimes," the Admiral said, "the only way to stop evil is with greater force. Your people asked for help. We're going to give you the most effective help possible." Dae-ho looked around the room at the human military officers. They all had the same expression. Cold determination mixed with righteous anger. These were people who had decided to fight, and nothing would change their minds. "What are you planning to do?" he asked quietly. "We're going to eliminate the hegemony as a threat," Admiral Kyung-min said simply. "Completely and permanently." "You mean genocide?" Dae-ho whispered. "I mean justice," the Admiral replied firmly. "The hegemony has destroyed 47 civilizations. They've killed trillions of innocent beings. They need to be stopped." General Haiwan pulled up a holographic display showing the hegemony's territory. Red dots marked destroyed worlds. The scale of destruction was enormous. "Look at this," she said to Dae-ho. "Every red dot is a dead civilization. The hegemony doesn't conquer. They exterminate. They kill everything that lives and take what they want from the corpses." Dae-ho stared at the display in horror. He had known the hegemony was evil, but he hadn't realized the full scope of their crimes. "They won't stop with your people," Admiral Kyung-min continued. "After they finish with the Valerians, they'll find another species to destroy, and another, until someone stops them." "But surely there's another way," Dae-ho pleaded. "Diplomacy, negotiation, something peaceful." Dr. Su-jin shook her head sadly. "We tried contacting them before we came here. They responded by broadcasting the execution of 1,000 Valerian prisoners. They wanted us to know that they don't negotiate." The room fell silent. Dae-ho felt the weight of the situation crushing down on him. His people had asked for simple help, and instead they had called upon warriors who wanted to fight a war. "How many hegemony ships do you expect to face?" he asked quietly. "Intelligence suggests about 8,000 warships," General Haiwan replied. 8,000! Dae-ho gasped. "You only have 400 ships. You'll be outnumbered 20-1. Admiral Kyung-min smiled for the first time since the meeting began. It was not a pleasant smile. "Ambassador," she said, "you're thinking like someone who's never fought a war. Numbers don't always matter. What matters is how effectively you use what you have." "We've studied the hegemony's tactics," General Haiwan added. "They rely on fear and brute force. They've never faced an enemy that fights back intelligently." "Are you saying you can win?" Dae-ho asked in disbelief. "We're saying we already have won," Admiral Kyung-min replied. "They just don't know it yet." As Dae-ho left the human flagship and returned to his own ship, his mind was spinning. He had come seeking mercy and found warriors. He had asked for medicine and been offered total war. But as he looked at the human fleet preparing for battle, he began to understand something terrifying. These humans weren't just confident. They were absolutely certain they would win. And if they were right, the galaxy was about to change forever. Overlord Krith received the news while eating his morning meal of live prey. A junior officer had rushed into his throne room with a report that made the massive reptilian leader laugh. "Humans?" Krith's voice was like grinding stone. 400 ships? And they think they can challenge the might of the hegemony? The officer, a smaller Draconis with nervous eyes, nodded quickly. "Yes, my lord. They appeared at the edge of Valerian space 3 days ago. Our spies report they have made contact with the surviving Valerians." Krith stood up from his throne, his enormous form casting a shadow across the room. He was 3 meters tall with scales like black armor and claws that could cut through metal. Red eyes glowed in his reptilian skull. "Excellent," he hissed. "Another species has decided to feed themselves to us. How long since we've had a real battle?" "Nearly a year, my lord," the officer replied. The last species we conquered surrendered after losing only a few ships. Boring, Krith spat. Send word to the fleet. We will crush these humans quickly, then finish eating the Valerians. I want to see what human flesh tastes like. The hegemony had grown fat and lazy from centuries of easy victories. They had never faced an enemy that could match their brutality, and they had certainly never lost a battle. Their ships were massive and heavily armed, designed to terrify enemies into surrender before the fighting even began. Admiral Kyung-min knew all of this as she prepared her fleet for the first engagement. Human intelligence had been studying the hegemony for months, learning their tactics and weaknesses. They'll send about 200 ships to test us, she told her captains during a strategy meeting. They expect us to run away when we see how outnumbered we are. Captain Jin Woo studied the tactical display. What's our response? We're going to show them what human warfare looks like, Admiral Kyung-min replied with a cold smile. The first hegemony fleet arrived exactly as predicted. 200 massive warships dropped out of hyperspace in a threatening formation, expecting to see the humans fleeing in panic. Instead, they found the human fleet waiting for them in perfect battle. Order Commander Yextar led the hegemony force. He was a veteran of 30 conquered worlds and had never lost a battle. When he saw the tiny human fleet, he almost laughed. Look at their ships, he told his officers. So small and weak. This will be over in minutes. What Yextar didn't know was that human warships were built very differently from hegemony vessels. Where the aliens relied on size and heavy armor, humans focused on speed, precision, and devastating firepower. All ships, begin attack pattern Alpha, Admiral Kyung-min ordered calmly. The human fleet suddenly scattered in all directions, moving faster than the hegemony ships could track. Then something happened that no alien species had ever done before. The humans attacked from every direction at once. Pilot Wu Jin was flying a human fighter craft no bigger than a hegemony shuttle, but his small ship carried weapons that could punch through the aliens' thick armor like paper. Target acquired, he reported as he dove toward a massive hegemony cruiser. Beginning attack run. Wu Jin's fighter launched a series of kinetic missiles. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit the alien ship, they went completely through its armor and exploded inside. The hegemony cruiser shuddered and began to break apart. Impossible, Commander Yextar whispered as he watched his ships being destroyed one by one. Their weapons are too small to hurt us. But the humans weren't using normal weapons. They had developed technology the hegemony had never seen. Plasma beams that could cut through any material. Gravity bombs that crushed ships from the inside. Smart missiles that could think for themselves and find weak spots in enemy armor. Colonel Do-yeon was leading the human ground forces, waiting for orders to board enemy ships. She watched the space battle on her command screen with professional interest. Look at how they move, she told her officers. The hegemony ships are slow and clumsy. They're built to fight enemies who stand still and trade shots. What happens when we board their ships? Asked Major Tae-hyun. They won't know what hit them, Do-yeon replied. Their soldiers are big and strong, but they've never fought anyone who fights back intelligently. The space battle lasted exactly 47 minutes. When it was over, 198 hegemony ships were destroyed or crippled. Only 2 escaped to report back to Overlord Krith. Human losses: 3 fighters damaged, 0 ships destroyed, 0 deaths. Commander. Yextar was pulled from the wreckage of his flagship by a human rescue team. As Colonel Do-yeon's soldiers dragged him to a medical bay, he couldn't understand what had happened. How? He gasped through his broken jaw. Your ships are so small. Your weapons looked weak. How did you destroy our fleet? Dr. Su Jin was treating his wounds with typical human efficiency. You made the mistake of thinking bigger means stronger, she told him. Humans learned long ago that intelligence beats brute force. Meanwhile, on the hegemony homeworld, Overlord Krith was receiving the report from his surviving ships. His red eyes burned with rage as he listened. 2 ships? He roared. Out of 200, only 2 ships escaped? The terrified messenger nodded. Yes, my lord. The humans, they fought like nothing we've ever seen. Their ships moved like living things. Their weapons struck from impossible angles. And their soldiers. What about their soldiers? They rescued enemy survivors, my lord. After destroying our fleet, they saved the lives of our wounded. This confused Krith more than anything else. In hegemony culture, showing mercy to defeated enemies was a sign of weakness. They spared our warriors, he asked. Yes, my lord. They treated their injuries and held them as prisoners. They said something about rules of war and treatment of captives. Krith began to pace back and forth, his claws clicking on the stone floor. These humans were unlike any enemy he had faced. They fought with incredible skill, but showed mercy to the defeated. This combination of strength and restraint was completely foreign to hegemony thinking. Send word to all fleet commanders, he ordered. I want every available ship prepared for battle. We will show these humans what real strength looks like. How many ships, my lord? All of them, Krith snarled. 10,000 ships. We will crush them with such overwhelming force that their mercy becomes meaningless. Back in Valerian space, Ambassador Deho watched the aftermath of the battle with amazement. The humans had destroyed a massive enemy fleet without losing a single ship. But what impressed him most was what they did next. Human medical ships rushed to help the wounded hegemony survivors. Human engineers began repairing damaged Valerian cities. Human soldiers set up refugee camps for displaced civilians. I don't understand, Deho told Dr. Su Jin. You fight like demons, but then you heal your enemies and help civilians. What kind of warriors are you? The kind that fight to protect, not to conquer, Su Jin replied. Humans learned long ago that true strength means being strong enough to be merciful. Admiral Kyung-min was already planning for the hegemony's next attack. She knew they would come back with everything they had. They'll send their entire fleet, she told her officers. 10,000 ships or more. They think overwhelming numbers will win the day. Will they? Captain Jin Woo asked. Admiral Kyung-min smiled the same cold smile she had shown Ambassador Deho. Jin Woo, she said. They're about to learn why humans don't fight fair. In the depths of space, the largest fleet in hegemony history was gathering. 10,000 warships carrying 1 million soldiers, all sworn to destroy the tiny human force that had dared to challenge their empire. But as the aliens prepared for what they thought would be an easy victory, the humans were unveiling weapons and tactics that would change the course of galactic history forever. The hegemony's massive fleet arrived like a storm of metal and death. 10,000 warships dropped out of hyperspace in the largest military formation the galaxy had ever seen. Each ship was enormous, bristling with weapons and carrying hundreds of soldiers eager for battle. Overlord Krith commanded from his flagship, a vessel so large it had its own gravity field. He stared at the small human fleet through the viewing screen and felt satisfaction burning in his chest. Look at them, he told his officers. 400 tiny ships against our 10,000. They must finally understand their mistake. The human fleet hung in space, looking impossibly small against the approaching wall of enemy vessels. Any reasonable species would have surrendered immediately or tried to run away, but humans, as the hegemony was about to learn, were not reasonable. Admiral Kyung-min stood on her bridge, calm as ice water. Around her, human officers worked at their stations with quiet efficiency. There was no panic, no fear, just professional focus. "Ma'am," reported Captain Jinwoo, "enemy fleet is moving into attack formation. They're trying to surround us." "Perfect," Admiral Kyung-min replied. "Signal all ships. Begin Operation Total Victory." What happened next would be studied in military academies for centuries to come. The human fleet suddenly split apart, each ship moving in a different direction. But instead of running away, they were moving into positions the hegemony couldn't understand. Then space itself seemed to come alive. Thousands of objects that looked like small asteroids suddenly activated around the hegemony fleet. They had been floating in space for weeks, looking like harmless space rocks. But they were actually human weapons, gravity mines that could create artificial black holes. "What is happening?" Overlord Krith demanded as his ships began getting pulled toward invisible points in space. "Unknown weapons, my lord," his tactical officer reported in panic. "They're creating gravity wells. Our ships can't maneuver. The hegemony ships were massive and powerful, but they had never faced weapons that could control gravity itself. Hundreds of vessels found themselves trapped, unable to move as invisible forces held them in place. Then the real attack began. From every direction, human weapons struck the paralyzed hegemony fleet. But these weren't normal missiles or energy beams. These were weapons that seemed to come from science fiction. Planet cracker missiles designed to destroy entire worlds slammed into hegemony battleships and vaporized them instantly. Nanoplague, weapons that could disassemble matter at the molecular level, ate through alien hulls like acid. Plasma cannons fired beams of pure energy that could cut through any known material. Pilot Wu Jin was flying a new type of human fighter that could phase in and out of normal space. He appeared inside a hegemony cruiser, fired his weapons at the ship's reactor, then vanished before the aliens could react. "Direct hit on reactor core," he reported calmly as the enemy ship exploded behind him. "Moving to next target." Colonel Du Yan was leading boarding parties against ships that survived the initial bombardment. Her soldiers wore armor that made them nearly invisible and carried weapons that could fire around corners. "Remember," she told her troops as they teleported directly onto enemy ships, "we're here to disable their vessels and capture prisoners. Try not to kill unless you have to." The hegemony soldiers had never faced an enemy like this. Their opponents seemed to appear from nowhere, strike with impossible accuracy, then vanish before they could fight back. Worse, the humans fought with a coordination that seemed almost telepathic. What the aliens didn't know was that human soldiers were connected by advanced brain-computer interfaces that let them share thoughts and coordinate perfectly. A single human squad could fight like a single organism with multiple bodies. "Surrender now, and you will not be harmed," Do-Yan announced over the ship's communication system. "Continue fighting, and we will disable your vessel with you inside it." Most hegemony soldiers had never heard the word surrender used seriously. In their culture, defeat meant death. The idea that enemies would offer mercy was completely foreign. But as they watched their comrades being effortlessly defeated by invisible opponents, many began laying down their weapons. In space, the battle had become a massacre. The hegemony's 10,000 ships were being destroyed faster than their crews could understand what was happening. Engineer Tae-hyun was controlling an entire squadron of human ships from his command center. Advanced AI systems let him coordinate dozens of vessels simultaneously, each one acting as an extension of his will. "Deploying time dilation field," he reported as he activated another impossible weapon. A bubble of distorted time formed around a group of enemy ships, slowing them down until they seemed frozen in space. Human fighters then calmly flew around the trapped vessels, placing precise charges that would disable them without killing their crews. Dr. Soo-jin watched the battle from the medical bay, where she was preparing to treat wounded from both sides. What amazed her wasn't the human victory. She had expected that. What amazed her was how efficiently they were winning. "Casualties?" she asked a tactical officer. 12 humans injured, all minor wounds," he replied. "0 deaths. We've disabled or destroyed 8,000 enemy ships. The remaining 2,000 are requesting permission to surrender." Dr. Soo-jin felt sick to her stomach. She had known humans were good at war, but she hadn't realized they were this good. The Hegemony Fleet, the most powerful military force in their part of the galaxy, had been crushed in 6 hours. On his flagship, Overlord Krith stared in disbelief at the tactical display. Most of his fleet was gone. The ships that remained were damaged and surrounded by human vessels that seemed to be made of pure impossibility. "How?" he whispered. "How is this possible?" His communication officer looked up with fear in his reptilian eyes. "My lord, we're receiving a transmission from the human commander." Admiral Kyung-min's face appeared on the screen. She looked tired but calm, like someone who had just finished a routine training exercise. "Overlord Krith," she said in perfect Draconis language. "I am Admiral Kyung-min of the Human Space Force. Your fleet has been defeated. Surrender immediately, and your surviving crews will be treated according to the laws of war." Krith's pride warred with his survival instincts. He had never surrendered in his life, but he had also never faced annihilation on this scale. "What are you?" he asked, his voice cracking with defeat. "We are humans," Admiral Kyung-min replied simply, "and we came here to help the Valerians. You made that necessary by threatening innocent lives." "You fight like demons," Krith said. "Your weapons are beyond our understanding. Your tactics make no sense. How do you coordinate so perfectly?" "We fight like humans," the Admiral corrected him. "We've been perfecting the art of war for thousands of years. We've learned that the best way to fight is to end the fighting as quickly as possible." "And now?" Krith asked, knowing his empire was finished. "Now you surrender," Admiral Kyung-min said firmly. "And then you stand trial for genocide. The 47 civilizations you destroyed deserve justice." Krith looked around at the ruins of his fleet. His officers stared at him with desperate eyes, waiting for orders that wouldn't come. The greatest military force the Hegemony had ever assembled had been destroyed by a fleet 1/25 its size. I surrender," he said quietly. Admiral Kyung-min nodded. "Colonel Do-yan will board your ship to accept your surrender formally. You and your officers will be treated as prisoners of war according to human military law." As the transmission ended, Krith slumped in his command chair. In 6 hours, the humans had destroyed an empire that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, and they had done it while trying to minimize casualties on both sides. Ambassador Dae-ho watched the end of the battle from his ship, his mind struggling to process what he had witnessed. The humans hadn't just won, they had won so completely that the word victory seemed inadequate. "Soo-jin," he said over the communication link. "What happens now?" Dr. Sujin's voice was tired when she replied. Now we give you the aid you originally asked for. Medical supplies, refugee assistance, and safety for your people. And the hegemony? The hegemony no longer exists, she said simply. We'll spend the next few months dismantling their military infrastructure and helping their former slaves build new governments. Daeho felt a chill run through his translucent skin. His people had asked for medicine and received the complete destruction of their enemies. He was beginning to understand that when humans offered to help, they meant it in ways that no other species could imagine. 6 months after the destruction of the hegemony fleet, Ambassador Daeho stood on the observation deck of a human hospital ship, watching something he had never thought he would see. Below him, the planet Keth Prime was being rebuilt. The world had been one of the hegemony's slave colonies where billions of beings from dozens of species had been forced to work in terrible conditions. Now, it was becoming something new. Human engineering teams had arrived within days of the battle's end. They brought with them machines that could reshape landscapes, purify poisoned air, and turn dead soil into fertile farmland. But more importantly, they brought something the galaxy had rarely seen: genuine care for suffering beings. It's remarkable, Daeho said to Dr. Sujin, who was standing beside him. 3 months ago, this planet was a place of death and despair. Now look at it. Sujin nodded, but her expression was troubled. We're good at fixing things, she said quietly. Maybe too good. Below them, construction robots were building new cities designed by the freed slaves themselves. Human doctors worked alongside alien medical teams in hospitals that treated anyone who needed help. Human teachers helped establish schools where young beings could learn about freedom and democracy, but Daeho could sense the fear that lurked beneath the surface of these good works. The other species were grateful to humans, but they were also terrified of them. How many former hegemony worlds have you liberated? Daeho asked. 47, Sujin replied. Every world they conquered, every species they enslaved. We're helping them all rebuild. And how many hegemony leaders have been captured? All of them, Sujin said simply. Overlord Krith and his entire command structure are being held for trial. We've dismantled their military completely. Daeho was quiet for a moment, processing this information. In 6 months, humans had not only destroyed the most powerful empire in their part of the galaxy, but had also taken responsibility for rebuilding everything it had destroyed. Sujin, he said carefully, my people are grateful for what you've done, but we're also afraid. Dr. Sujin turned to look at him. Afraid of what? Afraid of you, Daeho said honestly. We asked for medicine and food. You gave us the complete annihilation of our enemies. We asked for help, and you remade an entire sector of the galaxy. Sujin sighed deeply. She had been having similar conversations with representatives from dozens of species over the past months. Daeho, we gave you exactly what you needed, she said. Your people are safe now. No one will ever threaten them again. But at what cost? Daeho asked. The hegemony is gone, yes. But now everyone is afraid of humans. They see what you're capable of and they wonder if they might be next. This was the problem that Admiral Kyung-min had been dealing with since the end of the war. Human efficiency in destroying the hegemony had been so complete that other species were now terrified of human power. On the bridge of her flagship, Admiral Kyung-min was meeting with representatives from 12 different alien governments. They had come to thank humanity for ending the hegemony threat, but their real purpose was to understand what humans wanted in return. "Admiral," said Ambassador Velkun of the Christine Republic, "our government is grateful for your intervention, but we must ask, what are your intentions toward the rest of the galaxy?" Admiral Kyung-min had expected this question. "Our intentions are simple," she said. "We want to go home and leave you all in peace." The alien ambassadors looked confused. This wasn't the answer they had expected. "You're not planning to establish an empire?" asked Representative Zorhan of the Methane Confederacy. "No," Admiral Kyung-min said firmly. "Humans don't conquer. We protect." "But surely you want something," pressed Ambassador Velkun. "Payment for your services? Territory? Trade agreements?" "We want assurance that genocide will never happen again in this part of the galaxy," the Admiral replied. "That's all." The aliens exchanged glances. They couldn't understand a species that would wage such devastating war without wanting anything in return. General Haiwan entered the meeting room at that moment, carrying a data pad with the latest reports from the former hegemony territory. "Admiral," she said, "we've completed the establishment of democratic governments on all 47 liberated worlds. The new Confederation of Free Worlds has elected its first Council of Representatives." "Any problems?" Admiral Kyung-min asked. "Only one," General Haiwan replied. "They want to name their new government the Human Protectorate and declare humans their permanent guardians." The Admiral shook her head firmly. "Absolutely not. We're not here to rule anyone. Help them choose their own name and make their own decisions." Ambassador Velkun leaned forward. "Admiral, forgive me, but this makes no sense. You have the power to control this entire sector of space. Why don't you want to use it?" "Because that's not who we are," Admiral Kyung-min replied. "Humans fight to protect freedom, not to take it away." Meanwhile, on the planet below, Colonel Doyon was training new security forces for the liberated worlds. The former slaves were learning how to defend themselves so that nothing like the hegemony could ever happen again. "Remember," she told a class of mixed-species recruits, "the goal is not to be the strongest. The goal is to be strong enough that bullies leave you alone." One of her students, a former slave named Kexlow, raised his hand. "Colonel, what if someone like the hegemony comes back? What if they have bigger fleets and stronger weapons?" "Then, you call us," Colonel Doyon said simply. "Humans don't abandon our friends." This promise was becoming the foundation of a new galactic order. Word had spread throughout the galaxy about what happened to species that committed genocide. The message was clear. If you hurt innocent people, humans will find you and stop you permanently. But the flip side of that message was equally clear. If you needed protection from bullies, humans would help you. Engineer Tai Hyun was working with alien scientists to share human technology, but he was being very careful about what he shared. "We can teach you how to build better hospitals and more efficient farms," he told a group of eager researchers, "but we won't teach you how to build the weapons we used against the hegemony." "Why not?" asked one of the alien scientists. "Surely, we have the right to defend ourselves." "You do," Tae-hyun replied, "but some weapons are too dangerous to exist. We'll teach you to build defenses, not planet crackers." Back on the hospital ship, Ambassador Dae-ho was reading reports from across the former hegemony territory. The transformation was incredible. Worlds that had been polluted wastelands were becoming garden planets. Species that had been enslaved for generations were learning to govern themselves. But he was also reading intelligence reports about how other galactic powers were reacting to human intervention. "Sujin," he said, There are some species talking about forming military alliances to contain human expansion. Dr. Sujin looked worried. Even though we've made it clear we don't want to expand? They don't believe you, Daeho said. They think this is all a strategy to make them lower their guard. What do you think we should do? Daeho considered the question carefully. I think you should do exactly what you're already doing. Keep helping people who need help. Keep protecting those who can't protect themselves. Eventually, the galaxy will understand that humans really are different. And if they don't understand, Sujin asked, then they'll learn the same lesson the hegemony learned, Daeho said quietly. 3 months later, the first crisis came. A species called the Ravager clans began attacking shipping lanes in a distant part of the galaxy. They were raiders and pirates who had been inspired by the hegemony's example. The local government sent a message to Earth. We need help. Admiral Kyung-min received the request while she was preparing to return to human space. She read it twice, then called a meeting with her senior officers. Well, she said, it looks like we're not going home yet. Captain Jin Woo looked at the tactical reports. The Ravager clans have about 3,000 ships. They're attacking civilian targets and taking slaves. How long to get there? Admiral Kyung-min asked. 2 weeks, replied the navigation officer. Then, we leave in 6 hours, the admiral decided. Send a message to the Ravagers. Tell them they have 2 weeks to release all prisoners and surrender for trial. If they refuse, General Hyewan asked. Admiral Kyung-min's expression was cold as space. Then they'll learn that humans don't just fight for our friends once. We fight for them as many times as necessary. As the human fleet prepared to jump to hyperspace once again, Ambassador Daeho watched from his ship and understood something profound. His people had asked for help, and they had received something, much more valuable than medicine or refugee camps. They had received the protection of a species that would never stop fighting for justice. The galaxy was learning a new rule. If you hurt innocent people, humans will come for you. And when humans come for you, you don't survive the experience. But for those who needed protection, who asked for help against bullies and tyrants, humans would answer that call every single time. It wasn't the aid the Valerians had originally requested, but it was the aid the galaxy needed, and it was the aid that would change everything forever.